Welcome to Y11 Audio. I'm Alex Alvarado. Thank you for listening. It's Previews Week's Day 3. We're here to talk about the wide receivers after talking about quarterbacks on Monday, offensive line yesterday. Now it's time to talk about receivers. Receivers is obviously one of, just a fan favorite position. There's just like so much skill points that you can just win out there, down in and down out. You can be a good run blocker on the long runs, right? You can have the tremendous catches, right? You can have the breakaway speed. There's so much that wide receivers have to offer out there. In this offense, like there's, obviously like across offenses, like there's variance in how many that you just use on a per play basis. This team has been trying to be more of a, 2 tight end, 1 running back set. So that means that there's only going to be 2 receivers out there generally, right? That's not to say that it's 100%. Eastern doesn't define itself by, how many guys it has out there. It's not saying like, hey, we are the Mike Leach offense or anything like that, where you should expect to see so many receivers out there, on a given down. Eastern's going to play to his strengths and try to win with balance, right? That's the way its approach to the game is. That's why last year when like some things weren't going right, the whole thing was shutting down, because Eastern's recipe for success offensively is to have, make sure that the receivers are doing their parts, the running backs are doing their thing, the offensive line's making opportunities both ways, and the quarterbacks are obviously making good decisions. Have it be, do I throw to this crossing route right in front of me? Do I throw it deep yet? Do I hurry up and run away and avoid my pocket, going bye-bye? Do I keep it on this option play? So on and so forth. All that to say, the receivers, I don't know if this is going to be I just don't know what to expect out of like this room. Meaning, I don't know if this is going to be a team that, because of how many moving parts are, going through running back, right? Like there's 2 really good players that have essentially graduated out. Well, 1 graduated, 1 transferred, whatever. Obviously, Samson Evans was a really good running back who like took snaps as a wildcat, had passes out of there, but never had a receiving touchdown, even though he leads the school in most touchdowns scored. Jalen Jackson was the kind of guy where, smaller, sub in, yeah, he'd like run it up the middle, but then you could also like have that combo play where you, right after that run, hurry up, let's get back to the line. He splits out wide, he plays wide receiver, and he's an option out there too. And you can give them like an empty 5 wide set. Obviously, when you have the Jalen Jacksons, that opens your opportunities for what I just said, those 5 wide sets where you can get more of the receivers out there. Obviously, they're not subbing in yet, so you could assume that we're seeing 3 receivers out there if the previous run play had a tight end out there, because now he, probably like Jerry Getzinger, is probably split out. But they also have like plenty of options out there. More on that tomorrow. And we'll talk about the running backs and tight ends really and focusing on all that tomorrow, because those are the guys that do, 2 things, block and catch or run the ball. Let's kind of remember some recent names and like what the receiver room sort of looked like before and what we're all kind of snowballing ourselves into this year in terms of, who's going to play and all that. Because there are 3 recognizable guys who played together for, a long time alongside and next to each other, right? Dylan Drummond, Hassan Badoon, Tanner Canoe. Drummond, of course, was recruited in via scholarship, got some playing time as a true freshman, didn't have to have the kind of redshirt year or anything like that, but got the extended eligibility thanks to COVID. Got some NFL opportunities after that. Hassan Badoon, former walk-on who had to try out on the team, wasn't a preferred walk-on. Did it the super old-fashioned way, if you will. He also graduated before 2023. So last year, the only starter that was coming back really was Tanner Canoe, who, was also a former walk-on, a preferred walk-on. Back when he joined as a preferred walk-on, his friend was the quarterback who joined via scholarship, and then he since transferred out, Preston Hutchinson. But Tanner Canoe ended up winning a scholarship in like 2020, played, started, all that stuff. But when it came to like 2023, he didn't have to, it wasn't time for him to blend in anymore. It was time for him to actually be the number one receiver. If not him, then JB Mitchell, right? That didn't totally work out for a lot of reasons. We're not going to keep going down that path. But Tanner Canoe, decent athlete, would lead the team in receiving touchdowns. Had some nice acrobatic catches out there. But was he ever the biggest? Was he ever the fastest? Was he ever the strongest? As a former preferred walk-on, respectfully, he really wasn't. Like, maybe he might have been the hardest worker on the field. Maybe he made some really nice plays and could do some unique stuff with playing in a phone booth, if you will, in contested spaces. He did really well for himself. Hamza El-Zayat was a guy who missed the 2022 season after he transferred in from Fordham. A slot receiver. Was hurt 2022, played all of 2023, had some really nice catches, 2 50-yard touchdown scores. One of them was the game winner against UMass, of course. He was super useful, but both of those guys are gone. Okay? Also, there's some other guys that are gone, in depth pieces, but we didn't really see them. Like Javon Swinton, he's had a couple starts, but nothing major, nothing memorable from him. Caden Keefe, Tyron Bates, Joseph Walker Jr., a guy who had to flip from Western Michigan at the nth hour leading up to signing day. He transfers out too. So yeah, you lose a handful plus pieces. Tanner Canoe being the most harmful. Doesn't seem like this is a huge oh crap, how do we fill this, how do we fill this player sort of deal. Sure, you're missing some leadership, but I think that can be reconciled. JB Mitchell, the other starting receiver on the other side of the field, recruited out of high school, out of Alabama. Speedy dude. Not the fastest in the world, but is a speedy dude. Could kill you on the track meets. Can he get everything else right? I'm sure that he's going to be a starter again, but can he play as an X, a true X off the line? Because this receiving room, that's the goal, right? It's to collect as much talent as you can from all these different areas, recruited out of high school, transferred in, developed over a long period of time, what have you. Find the X. Figure out your slot options, but you have to find the X. So that's going to be essentially the goal of camp for this receiving room. Some of the slot options we're going to have to highlight and just say hey, this is probably going to be your role. No, that's not saying that's a bad thing out there. But they just offer different parts of the playbook, because your X, you're trying to beat, the best corner on the other team, down in and down out. You're trying to beat them in a lot of ways, to best disguise your runs and passes and all that stuff, but also to be able to blow right past them, to be able to stretch the field and to, give your quarterback some opportunities to, pick up 15 yards, 20 yards downfield plus through the air on your side. That's your goal as the receiver, is to get open. That's your first job before catching the pass. So JB Mitchell, hope for as long as he stuck around in this program, hasn't transferred out, now wearing the number 1. Don't know which of these players is going to wear the number 2 jersey. But I mean, if Canoe got the number 2 last year, I would assume that JB Mitchell, for the same reasons, would get it this year. Still, he's not the only one, right? Just because he's the longest lasting player with the most experience on this team, that doesn't mean he is going to be the number one receiver. I could see him being like, if so many of these other transfers come in and just like play at their best, I could see like JB being like a third, fourth best option out there. And I think he's a really good football player. I think he's really good. I've been like looking forward to seeing more of him because I just thought his speed is such a good complement. He's got a good size out there, but I mean my eyes are not good enough at this point to say like who should be the X, who should be the Z, so on and so forth. That's all for them to battle out during camp. All right, just going down the list of other returning receivers on this team. A few transfers to start off with. Terry Lockett Jr., his second year in from Michigan State, and Jamarian Wheeler, who also transferred in last year from, I think it was like Iowa Western. It was junior college. Those guys are both listed on the depth chart. Terry Lockett is the number 1Z, and Jamarian Wheeler is the backup X to J.B. Mitchell. Isaac Smith, Tyree Lockett, Nick Devereaux, a former preferred walk-on, or still a preferred walk-on. Those guys are still on the roster. Other guys that come back, three guys that joined as preferred walk-ons: Owen McGraw, Adam Ramone, and Quinn Fracassi. Those guys were preferred walk-ons when they joined. Mikhail Wood is a Atlanta area signee. Been looking forward to, seeing him maybe play. He got into the bowl game last year. I remember that. I don't know if he's at the point where he can, play and start and all that stuff. That's for camp to settle out, but he is a name that, obviously he's around. Joseph Walker is out. They were from the same signing class, both receivers. I wouldn't be surprised if Mikhail Wood showed that he was just more impressive. I think that he's someone that is capable of having a breakout redshirt freshman year. So just excited. Circle his name. Some transfers that are coming in. Tyler Walton, unfortunately, a guy who was coming in as a graduate transfer from Ohio. I thought he did good work there, but he's been medically disqualified. So sucks to see that his Eagle career is over before it even gets to begin. But four names that we will be able to see. I'm going to start with a former MAC guy, Orrin Singleton, Man as he's nicknamed, transferred from Akron to Hutchinson Community College. Played 1 year at each of those. Didn't play in 2022, but was a former 3-star receiver out of Florida. Obviously, he's a ready-made slot option. Okay, he's ready to go. As long as, he's healthy and all that stuff, he's good to go. Zael Griffin from Washington, graduate transfer from UNLV, played every year since 2020, 5 games, 9 games, 2 games, 9 games. But he never, had great seasons. Like his best season would be 2021, 9 games, 11 catches, 223 yards, and a couple of scores. Nothing to shake your head at, right? That nothing to not be proud of with that. But obviously, he's a guy that fits the mold of, hey, I feel like I'm capable of more. This would give me an opportunity. If me plus some other transfers come in can get it off, it'd be great. Porter Rooks, who, his senior year at NC State, saw that his team was going more into an air raid system, thought he was going to get a much bigger opportunity, or I should say just more playing time than what he got. But just looking at his stats, it just kind of went down over the years, which kind of really stinks. Especially considering that he's a former 4-star wide receiver from Charlotte, North Carolina. For him to go to NC State, just rooting for the NC State guys, right? But played pretty much every game. minus last year's bowl game, of course. Pretty much every game over the course of his college career. 24 passes his freshman year, 23 passes his technically next freshman year because of COVID. 19 catches in 22, and then 13 catches last year. He still has a year to give, but only has 1 year of eligibility remaining. But he's the kind of guy that, he was already the kind that was thrown in front of the media to field questions and all that stuff. So that is to say that there is a level of trust with him from that Dave Doran coaching staff, one that I already hold in like pretty high regard. So Rooks has the capabilities, didn't perform the way he wanted to, had some miscues and drops that, probably hurt him early on in his senior year and affected how much opportunity he was able to get later on throughout the year. So Rooks is a guy that, hey, I'm moving away from home. I got 1 year to do it, essentially. So I would look out for him. And the last one, Marcus Allen with a K, transferred from Wisconsin, class of 2021 in high school out of Northmont High School in Clayton, Ohio. Played in his first 2 seasons, but not fully. 10 total catches at Wisconsin over 9 games. 1 score in his second season, so that's kind of cool. But didn't play last year in 2023. In April of 2023, he was at a block party. He was carrying a concealed weapon. The police would, after, scuffle, all that stuff, a bunch of people were arrested, including him. Had the gun on him. They would later say that the weapon was stolen, didn't say how or who or what, anything like that. But had to meet some demands, and then he was good to go. I'm not going to elaborate too much on that because I'm not, I didn't focus too much of my attention on all that. He did hit the transfer portal immediately, was set to go to Butler in like December 28th or something like that, like really, really late in the year. 29th? Wow. That's what my notes say. Announced that he was going to go to Butler Community College for this 2024 season until Eastern came around and said, hey, why not come here? So football-wise, I'm not going to get into like his past. I'm not going to dig too much into there. That's just like the reason why he left Wisconsin. Anyways, former 4-star receiver, 2 of them on the roster. Marcus Allen, much younger. I shouldn't say much younger, but he does have more years to give than Porter Rooks. Allen is the kind of guy that you would want to build around if he hits. If he hits, that means that you have a very good receiver, not just this year, but in the next couple of years to come. We could be looking at the last seasons for Zyel Griffin, Porter Rooks, 2 guys that would want to give it their all. But transfers that, have more than 1 year to give. Marcus Allen on the outside, Singleton on the inside as a slot guy. That's pretty good. And then hopefully one of these guys that we've recruited out of high school, they can come to the fold, like Mikael Wood. I already talked about how talented he could be. He showed that he is able to perform at a very, very high level through his high school tape. Practiced against, oh my goodness, I'm already blanking on his name. Caleb Downs. He was Caleb Downs' teammate. So a lot of guys that could make it, that are playing for that immediate playing time this year, of course, right? Starts with JB Mitchell, and then it goes with guys that, have been on the roster, maybe just joined in the spring. But there's a lot of guys that are fighting for very, very limited playing time. The best thing that they can do for themselves, and this is going to sound like the silliest thing in the world, but catch the ball, right? Just catch the ball, because if you catch the ball, you're going to keep these drives alive. And if you keep these drives alive, you might get that second chance, but guess what? Your teammates might also get that second chance. And I hate that just had to sound so elementary, but the point of the matter is this, is that, the offense didn't go far last year. Like, we have to use that as a little bit of inspiration this year, unfortunately, is that the offense didn't go forward. And if you're doing your part this year to keep it not going forward, if a new quarterback is coming into the sitch and he is, hitting your hands and the ball is hitting the ground after that, that's a problem. So that is a problem. Actually, yeah, if you want to get your teammates playing time, do that. Drop the ball. But I mentioned the two deep a little bit, and I kind of got, lost in my other list. Let me just read the two deep really quickly. At X, and this is just for the summertime. This is what was handed out in July. At the X, it's JB Mitchell 1, Jamarian Wheeler 2. At the Z, it's Terry Lockett Jr. As the number 1, and then Porter Rooks the number 2. And then at H, it's listed Oren Singleton, followed by Mikhail Wood. And then alongside Mikhail Wood, the top listed tight end, again, we're going to talk about tight ends tomorrow, is Max Reese. There's three signees that are like worth pointing at really quickly. I don't really expect, unless one is just like super impressive and like there's no reason not to play him in front of all these transfers, then I don't really foresee any of these guys hitting the field like in important spots in 2024. Antonio Floyd, 3-star receiver out of Atlanta, Lovejoy High School. Dalen Wilkins went to the same high school as Marcus Allen. That's pretty sweet. He's 6'3". That's really good. One quick note on him. I don't have too many notes on all these high school guys, but this is a really cool note. Tied the state of Ohio's record all time for most receiving touchdowns in a game against Dayton Dunbar, which I had to look it up. They had a better season than his high school. So, yeah, it didn't come up against like some cupcake, right? The record was 6. His stat line was 11 catches, 202 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Then the preferred walk-on that comes on from Atlanta, C.J. Wilson from Parkview High School. I don't know, just to answer like 2 of these questions that I typed out at the very bottom that we'll end on. 1, will there be any room for these freshmen to hit the field? It's going to be hard to, man. It's going to be hard to, especially with not just 1, but 2 graduate transfers coming into the fold. And if any freshmen are going to see the field, they have to outperform Mikhail Wood, who's, I think is really talented, but, I haven't watched, the practices or anything like that. So they would have to outperform him first before anything. Then you have to get in front of all these grad transfers. I don't see too much of that. If the quarterback situation was younger, I could buy it. I could buy that. But even then, I don't know. I just think like the receivers in front might be a little bit too talented. And then the last question that we're just going to end on, I wanted to keep this short. This is going longer than I thought. That's fine. Good problem to have. Will there be any one receiver that can have the Darius Lassiter type of impact? Like Darius Lassiter, he didn't have like the biggest season in the world in his 1 year at Eastern in 2022. But he came into a situation where there were 3 very recognizable, pretty tenured receivers that he was playing right next to. Hassan Badoon, I think that was, it was right after his 1,000-yard season. So he was coming in with a lot of hype. Darius Lassiter is a guy who had a lot of size that those other receivers just didn't have to offer, and had to prove it right away that, he was that guy coming out of JUCO and that he was destined for more. 40 catches, 471 yards, 4 touchdowns. Fairly good season just looking at that. In my memories of how he got to that point, like he had to battle through the camp, of course, right? Wasn't the primary number 1 receiver out there all the time, but was still able to, develop a certain chemistry with Taylor Powell that, even though that they weren't always successful in it, Taylor would try to really go to him in like really, really tight opportunities, like 3rd and 9s, just really, really important downs. Again, didn't always work out in the season, but by the time the bowl game came around, there was one particular drive where Darius Lassiter was targeted 3 or 4 times, and he himself drove Eastern down the field for a score for like 90-something yards. Like, Darius Lassiter had that kind of impact where, no, he didn't take over for the season, but there were important moments where the new grad transfer quarterback came in and recognized, hey, this is going to be my guy when it counts most. And it did. So Lassiter gave, the quarterbacks a little bit more confidence out there. Obviously added more competition to that receiving room that was definitely required when you had so many returning parts. You got to spice it up a little bit. You can't just keep everything, the same year in and year out. What stunk is that he ended up transferring out, going to BYU after spending the 2023 spring with Eastern. Did pretty well, 29 catches, 365 yards, 4 touchdowns a game. So good on him to, continue on there. But still, Eastern's over here looking for its next Darius Lassiter type of impact. And if any of these, these transfer receivers are up for it, Eastern's, they're more than willing to host it.